And there we go. We are live. So this is episode 1, the New Year's Eve edition of Wizardly Ramblings. And this is just kind of the start of a new kind of chat with my friends here on BookTube, where we just kind of discuss what we got going on, what kind of, inspirations for reading comes from and things of that nature. And I am joined by my good and formerly blonde friend, Sarah. How are you doing, Sarah?
I feel like every time I go live, Pippin decides to just lose it. Like, he's quiet all day, and then he's like, oh no, the computer's on. I must bark at everything. Listen to him.
He says, I want to be internet famous.
He does. You know what? If I tried to call him in here, he wouldn't even come because he's just persnickety like that. But yes, thank you, Andrew. I'm excited to talk. Thank you for having me and my loud dog on your channel.
Oh, no, it is absolutely 100% my pleasure. It was funny, this morning I was actually watching your January TBR video, and I just have to say that you've always been a good friend to me, Sarah, at the very least.
Thank you. I think that it was the perfect video to make at the end of 2022, and I was laughing so much, so Andrew was sitting next to me. My Andrew was sitting next to me as I was editing it, and I was laughing so much, he was like, Sarah, there's no way that this video is as funny as you think it is. I was like, it doesn't even matter.
Doesn't matter. The video is for you. Yeah. It's funny, whenever I post something online in any of the Discord, I always people just go, oh, there it goes Andrew. And I always have to follow it up with, I think I'm funny. Mm. And nope, Tori, you are right on time. We've only been going for about a minute. But yeah, so how was your year?
It was good. Good. Reading wise, it was a good year, I have to say. Like, the tail end of this year, personally, has been brutal because I feel like I've been sick since, I don't know, like the end of October. Just my children just keep going to school and bringing back endless germs. Like, it's at the point now where I'm like, okay, we'll just homeschool them. We can build them a desk like underneath the table or something and stick them in a bubble down there because I don't want to be sick anymore. But reading wise, it was a really good year. I don't remember because I'm really bad at keeping up with Goodreads, so I haven't yet logged all of my books, but I do have my journal here. So let me see. By the time I finished The Hero of Ages, which I have been forcing people on Discord to bully me into reading it because I promised I would finish it before the end of the year, and I have less than 200 pages left, so it will be read this year. So once I read Hero of Ages, I will have read
the first half of Mistborn.
I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can put myself through this again for a second time for Era 2, especially since everybody seems to love Era 1 more than Era 2, and I gotta admit, it's a struggle.
I have an interesting relationship with Mistborn because I really loved Era 1. Mm-hmm. And then because this is pre-BookTube when I was reading it, I read the first one, which I think is Alloy. I actually don't own those on hardcover. I don't know why I keep looking up to where my Mistborn books are. I read the first one, and I really loved it. I really loved the dynamic that Wax and Wayne had. And then I felt like the series lost that dynamic, and I think this is probably intentional. But it led to me not enjoying books 2 and 3 quite as much. And then Lost Metal just brought it home for me. So I really, really enjoyed that. And Tori I was giving Tori shenanigans about the beanie, and I was saying this backstage before we went live, and I couldn't get my lighting right because the massive forehead was reflecting the light, so I went and grabbed a beanie to kind of break up the light situation that was going on with my horrible amateurish lighting. But yeah, I do have a beanie on, Tori. My reading this year kind of took off because last year I thought I did pretty well. I was at 124 books, and then it just I lost control. I lost all sense of just control. I've actually for the last 3 to 4 days been just sitting back on my laurels. Don't get me wrong, Alan would be like, oh yeah, you started Shogun early, you're sitting back on your laurels, because Alan likes to go on the attack. And Alan loves, it was funny, Alan was just like, Alan, why are you so confrontational? I love chaos, was his answer. So he just does it for fun. But I've been just kind of reading 50 pages of Shogun a day, and that's it. And 50 pages for me is nothing because I was doing 200 to 300.
I'm laughing at Emily. So she said we need a recreation of your son's reaction to your hair color. So I will give the story of this hair color. My hair was blonde for 2 years. It's not naturally blonde. Like, it's naturally this like eyebrow color, like darkish brown. But it was blonde for a while. It gets harder, like the more you dye it, obviously, like the frizzier it gets and like the more dead it gets. So it was time to go back. But when I went to the hairdresser, she was like, "Do you want me to cover all the blonde?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" Unbeknownst to me, that meant it would be like this almost like pitch black color. So when the dye was done, I was like, "Whoa, this is substantially darker." So I get home, like walk into the house, and my kids are in the basement playing a game. And I like walk down, and my son was playing Switch, and he drops his Switch controller. Both my kids are really dramatic. So he drops the Switch controller and lets out this like ear-piercing shriek, like, ah! Like at the top of his lungs, and then pretends to faint, like on the back of the couch. That was it. So that was the reaction when I came out into the house.
That's hilarious. I remember one instance where the only time I ever remember my mom like doing something weird with her hair is my mom used to have like shoulder length hair. And one day, like I was walking, like, you know, because she just came in, sat down and started watching TV after coming back from the hairdresser. And I was walking by, and all of a sudden, like I do this double take, and I just kind of swipe the back of her neck. I'm like, "What happened to all of your hair?" She had pixied it. And she was just like, she's like, I'm done. You know, you're 18 years old. Like I'm in my 50s. I don't care anymore. I don't want to deal with this hair.
She went full mom hair.
She went full mom. And I mean, she stayed that way. Well, no, I think in 2011, she started growing her hair back out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So my mom was hysterical. But yeah, so it's funny because I was trying to remember how we kind of connected. Because I started following you when you were at 300 subs. Like I think I just started following you, and then like 2 days later, Patrick gave you the shout out. Mm. And so I had just commented on your Legend review that like, hey, I'm getting ready to read this too, and then we just started chatting back and forth ever since then. And then you kind of pulled me back into Gemmel with the Troy trilogy.
This was the year of Gemmel for both of us, the Troy year. This will go down in history as the year of Troy.
Did you read the whole thing?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay. Good. There was just so many like Easter eggs in there. Like one of the characters, and I'll just say he was from Egypt. Mm-hmm. Like when I got to the end of his story, I was like, what? Like I was just like, no way. There's no way. And I was just like, that was so cool. Like for me, that is going to become an all-time favorite series. I've read, oh God. So I read the Troy trilogy. Mm-hmm. I've read 6 Draenei books. Yeah. I've read 2 Brigantes and 1 standalone. So I've read a lot of Gemmel since Legend. And yeah, like it's one of those authors that like I was searching reviews. I found yours. I think Nico and I had, oh yeah, Nico's here. Had been discussing starting Gemmel, and then I took off like a fever. Mm-hmm. Oh, Ben, you were gonna love it. It's really so excellent. Good.
The thing I love about Troy is it reminds me of Warlord in that I would classify both of them as historical fiction, mm-hmm. with the idea that you could believe some of it is fantasy if you wanted, but you could also explain the things that happen as coincidence or superstition or an embellishment of events, or, you know, like sometimes in Warlord Chronicles, the things that Merlin does seem magical, but you can find a thread to explain them. And the same thing happens with Troy. So it takes those events and explains them in a way that could be plausible. And it takes things that happen like the Trojan War and some of the duels that are fought and makes them feel more realistic too, which I really liked.
Yeah, so I've heard the term used, historical fantasy, mm-hmm. for Troy. Hold on, it looks like my internet's dropping real quick. Let me just close Discord. See if that's robbing me of some of my signal. I don't know if I'm cutting in or out or anything.
Not for me so far.
Okay, cool. You get that, like, you know, StreamYard has that little thing of like your signal strength. And so sometimes like I look at that and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna sound like a robot. And so thankfully that hasn't happened. But yeah, historical fantasy is what I would call the Troy trilogy. Mm-hmm. Because it's got those things of like, that that could definitely be historical fiction or fantasy, because you've got some prophetic stuff going in there that like it's very close. It rides that line. And then Troy, or the Warlord, was it was hilarious. At some of the magic stuff was hilarious, especially in the later books. I just loved that. Yeah,
and
Troy.
He was bold with Troy. Like, you go into book 1 and fall in love with the story and the characters, and then in book 2 he plucks 3 totally obscure characters from book 1 and elevates them and puts them right in the front row. And book 2 is my favorite of the 3 of them. He made a power move, and it paid off for him.
So yeah, there are definitely those 2 characters who are like at the end of Lord of the Silver Bow.
Yeah.
And then he makes them main POVs in the follow-up. And I loved that dynamic. Like, that's one of the best bromances ever. And the way that unfolds through the next 2 books is just spectacular, because they're not necessarily good people, but they're bros and they're hilarious. One's dumb and one's not. I love that. That series actually is the reason why I started reaching for Warlord Chronicles, and for I am not versed in historical fiction.
Yep.
And it wasn't until David Gimbel's Troy trilogy where I was like, maybe, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like it's a far reach from fantasy to historical fiction. Like, all they have is magic. That's the difference, is magic. And so by having kind of just removed the magic, I still found magic in these stories. It's just more through the combat and storytelling and the characterizations. I've since read Speaks the Nightbird, which is Matthew Corbett book 1 by Robert McCammon. I have acquired so many books.
I love how that just led to like a total slumping, because you have acquired so many books.
Oh my gosh. It was funny because I don't know your experience, because when I started BookTube, I started watching Mike's book hauls. And so that was the bar to beat, or at least meet. And so I don't know if I've privated them, but like my first book haul was 32 books. Like, that was where we started. And since then, it's just, I've always got to one up, I've always got to go for one more. And my next haul is, I mean, between the digital sales on ebooks and gifts and review copies, I did a big no. So I created an email. I tweeted about this. I don't know if you saw it. I created an email and linked it to my channel. I forgot I had linked it to the channel. And so I wasn't checking it. And for like 2 years, people were just sending review requests and like sponsorship requests and things of that nature. And I wasn't checking. The email account went dormant. I had to go and retrieve it. And like, there was authors where I was just like, man, like, I wish they would have asked me. And they did ask me. They did it in a place where I wasn't checking, or they would ask me, and then they would ask me via like Twitter or Instagram, and they would never tell me they emailed me.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I went to link it, because I was like, I should have an email linked to my account in case people want to get in touch with me. And then when I went and it was like for business contact, and I clicked that, and I was just like, oh no, it's already linked. And so I just went in, and it was like 2 days of responding to emails. It was, I messed up.
So now you have a flood of books.
Yeah, I've probably got 10 to 15 review copies on their way.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and I already had a lot of review copies. I can't say no, because one thing I want to do is I want to promote indie. I want to promote these authors. Like, there are some great stories that just not enough people are reading. And I'm happy that, at least within our small corner of BookTube, we can promote those. But do you have any embarrassing stories like that?
Like, forgetting that I had an email linked up to my thing?
Or just in general, like, I don't want to.
Most of my embarrassing stories are really inappropriate.
Okay, well, let's keep it PG.
What embarrassing stories do I have?
A bookish embarrassing story. Let's keep it bookish.
A bookish embarrassing story. I don't know. I'll keep thinking on it. If I get a good one, then we'll come back and I'll be like, oh, Andrew, I have one.
We'll cycle back.
Okay.
So Chris here has a question that I'm going to try and tackle. It says, would you suggest starting the Troy series or the Draenei? In retrospect, what I would suggest, and that's not true. So Troy Trilogy is David Gemmell at his best. He died while in the middle of writing the third book, and then his wife and publisher had to come together and finish the book on his behalf. And it's a masterpiece. The entire trilogy is peak David Gemmell. So the problem I have is it's always hard to be like, hey, you can start here with this author. It's the best work they've done. And then they've got a backlog of 30 books that's just not going to stack up. So I would actually recommend start Draenei, get a few books into Draenei or Regante, then read Troy. But then you've got to decide, because with Draenei, there is hold on, I lost my train of thought. Draenei, there we go. It's chronological and publication. It's one of those issues. Right. I recommend going the chronological and not publication. And there's a pro and a con for going either way, because David Gemmell is one of those authors who starts really rough in Legend. It's a good book, but like it's rough. It's rough. It's the 80s. It's sword and sorcery is basically what this is. It's historical or it's heroic fantasy. And then with each subsequent release, the structure and everything flows a little better and improves. But also, like, he'll spoil the 6th book and the 1st book because chronologically they're flipped. And so it's just, you've got to really decide which way you want to go.
Interesting. And that's the same thing. This is not Gemmell, but I just put on my January TBR Sharp's Tiger, which when I was initially recording the video, because all I knew was that it was a Sharp book by Bernard Cornwell. So when I was recording the video, I was like, oh, this is the first Sharp book. Then when I went to link the picture, when I was editing the video, it was like the follow-up to the hit series. I was like, what? Isn't this book 1? This is what Alan told me to read. And then I went and looked at it. It is the first chronological book, but not the first published book. So I guess I'll be reading Sharp in chronological order. As opposed to publication order. Because the first one published, I think, is Sharp's, well, I looked it up yesterday, like Sharp's Eagle, maybe? One of the other ones is the first Sharp book.
Oh, I thought Tiger was first.
No, not first published, but first chronologically.
Well, okay then. Fair enough.
So...
Philip is going to be reading Legend in January. It's a good read. It's got a couple rough spots and it's got a couple pacing issues, but it's really good.
It is fun. It is what I imagine Kings of the Wild is going to be like, but I have not yet read Kings of the Wild. But I'm hoping that it is a modern kind of homage to Legend. It sounds like they're similar in terms of, like, you know, legendary figure coming back into the fray.
Man, so
if
you're going in expecting something like in Kings of the Wild, if you're going in expecting something akin to David Gemmell, no.
Not in terms of style, but just like it is about people who are retired coming back in to like get together and fight, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's about a band. It's very musically influence, but it is about a band of like that's broken up, you know, and basically bands would get together and go and fight monsters and stuff like that. And the series then evolves in Bloody Rose. I thought Bloody Rose was a bit weaker, but no, it's a good book, but it's more humorous. It's a lot more humorous than yeah, like Moog is like a gay wizard in this book, and then like he's constantly doing like crazy stuff. He's a very eccentric individual, and he's one of my favorite characters in the story. Some of the best LGBTQ plus representation I've ever read in a story. Not the best, but it's some of the best.
Yep.
Because it's just the way he talks about his partner is like very, you know, it's love is what it is, and it's just coming from a position of love, which I really enjoy when LGBTQ plus does that. If you're going to have that element in the story, then just make it natural. Just make it part of that world. I don't, you know, I want to just be with these characters and, just enjoy their lives. And if there's struggles in those lives, that's great. But yeah, Moog is one of the best characters I've read in a long time. I still remember Moog because he like keeps spiders up in his, they're like glowing spiders and stuff. It's fantastic. I don't know. But I think the reason those are linked is because it won a Gimel Award, if I remember correctly.
Maybe it did. I don't know. I don't remember.
I think it was the last one to win a Gimel Award.
John Gwynne won a Gimel Award, I think, didn't he?
Did he?
I think so. I think Malice won maybe in 2006. Let's see.
Is Malice that old?
Maybe not. 2008?
I thought Malice came out in 2011.
Maybe it was. I don't know. Let's see. Gimel. No, I think the 2006 is coming from when he passed away, I think, maybe. Or 2005.
Yeah, that's when John Gwynne passed.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no. Philip says Gwynne won a Gimel Award.
All right, let's see.
I didn't know that.
If Philip says so, then I feel confident.
It must be true because he is the booktube professor.
Yeah.
Unlike that smarmy Professor Fireballs guy.
He's the one for Best Newcomer in 2018. So you are also correct. John Gwynne won for, let's see.
Hi, Lauren. I didn't know that because I think the Gwynne Award was discontinued in 2018. I think.
Yes.
I think that was the last year for it.
Yep.
But Sci-Fi Rogue says Paul McGann, which I don't know if you know who Paul McGann is, was originally cast as Sharp and then broke his leg and was replaced with Sean Bean. Wow. And I think because of that, Paul McGann then got cast as the 8th Doctor in Doctor Who back in 1997 for the TV movie that went nowhere, but then he's since reprised the role a couple times on screen, and he's got a whole range of audio dramas. And that should let you know that I'm a Doctor Who nerd.
That's like one of my good friends in real life, like non-booktube friend, has a Doctor Who blog that he has run for like decades. He is the biggest Doctor Who nerd that I know. He is obsessed.
I have watched probably 95% of what exists. Mm-hmm. And that includes going back to 1963.
Yep.
So I've watched all of it. And I've listened to probably the first 15 years of audio dramas that Big Finish Productions put out, which is just the actors coming back and doing talks and stuff. I'm a huge Doctor Who nut. That's so awesome. I mean, my mom got me into it probably during the Matt Smith era, which is why Matt Smith is better than David Tennant. And you can fight me on that. You can fight me on that. You can. Yeah, I'll die on this hill. Matt Smith is better.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I can't believe this. Are you excited for the new Doctor?
Well, the new Doctor is David Tennant.
True. But are you excited for? Because he's just coming back. He's not coming back for a season. It's just for a special, right?
It's for 3 specials. So all of 2023 is going to be David Tennant, and then post 2023 is going to be Ncuti Gatwa.
Right. It was from Sex Education, right?
I believe I'm watching TV. Literally, if it's not Doctor Who or Stargate, I'm probably not watching it.
You haven't seen it.
Well, I will. Okay, so for somebody who's so into sci-fi and fantasy, I don't watch any of the new shows. I still haven't seen the new Game of Thrones. I watched the first episode, but there's something about my TV, and I probably need to mess with the settings. But whenever I'm watching those on HBO Max, like the blacks are just black. And so then like whenever it's like a low light scene, my screen just basically goes black with like slight highlights. I can see Matt Smith's blonde hair just floating on my screen. And it's just, I've lost all the details. So I don't know. I've heard it was great. I know Matt Smith is in it, and I know I love Matt Smith as an actor. I'll watch it eventually, but like I watch a lot of Gordon Ramsay shows.
I like to watch people yelling at other people who are cooking.
Yeah, it's how I relieve my stress and fall asleep at night. What can I say?
My husband also loves Gordon Ramsay. Maybe it's an Andrew thing.
You know what? There are some fantastic Andrews out there, and yours just might happen to be one of them. Andrew D. Meredith, Andrew of the Wizardly Reads. I'm sure there's other Andrews. I think Andrew from Get Right On In. I think that's another channel. There's a few of us out there. So anyway, I was gonna go off on another tangent. I was gonna just feel free to tell me to be quiet.
Never. I will never tell you to be quiet.
Oh, okay. So, what is a book that has been kind of on your radar that you just haven't been able to get to?
Have I told you about the last 200 pages of Hero Ages?
But you're currently working on it.
Very true. I have my little stack here, actually. Let me go over. So the ones that I want to read, other than the ones that I have on my TBR for next month. So I want to read Ship of Destiny. I talked about this too. So I actually read this many pages, which is like 5. And I was really sick, and it sounds really pathetic, but this was really hard to hold up. I was like, this is too heavy. I can't do it. It's going to fall on my head. So that was depressing. And I really, really want to read The Trouble.
Oh my gosh.
I read A Little Hatred.
I've got this one right here.
So good. I could not stop reading it. And all I have wanted to do is read this, and I have been really good, and I've been reading Hero of Ages, although it's not fair to Hero of Ages because now I'm resentful of Hero of Ages because I'm like, you're not the trouble with peace. So how dare you?
How dare you take up my reading time?
Yeah, so it's been unfair.
Yeah, but I've got a whole shelf of books I could pull from. I mean, like I started Count of Monte Cristo a few months ago just on a whim. Like my buddy Nico loves this one. And I got about 25.
If my copy was abridged or not. Keep talking. I'll be right back because I actually want to know. I'll be right back.
Oh, you'll know if it's abridged or not because it'll be a brick. But like my buddy Jordan got me The Legend of Eli Monpress by Rachel Aaron. I've been meaning to get to that for 3 or 4 months. But something that's truly been taking forever. What's one that I've absolutely needed to get to? I'm sure somebody's going to call me out in the comments down below. All right. Something that I have been ignoring for far too long. Honestly, Trend for Portable Magic has been harping on me for over a year to read Draconis Memoria.
Dragons are always a good idea.
Yeah, well, I just read Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, and it blew my socks off. Oh, it's such a great You want a good nautical fantasy? That one's really good.
Awesome. So my copy is 1,243 pages. I'm assuming that that's not abridged.
Is it? No, is that the Penguin?
This is the Penguin one.
Yeah, that one is unabridged. I think that's the one that Nico reads from, and he told me that one's unabridged. Yep, he's already piping up.
Thank
he's
you.
In the comments. He's piping
up. I have the full story here. If I read this, I'm not going to find out at the end that I didn't actually read it all and then want to cry.
Yeah, mine is. Hold on, because this is the Penguin hardcover. These are okay. These are notes. So I think mine is 1,243.
Yeah.
So yeah, if it's over 1,200 pages, don't worry. You've got the unabridged.
Excellent. Excellent. Imagine picking up like an 850-page book and it being the abridged version. Like, sorry, this is my God. Short.
Well, that's what the Stand is.
Yeah, true.
The original Stand is abridged because he removed 400 pages, which would make it like 700 to 800 pages.
Yeah.
I'm still mad at. I haven't read the Stand.
The abridged, like the original.
Oh, okay. I was like, I could have sworn.
But
I was like, I could have sworn
read the original one without the extra. It'd be fun to read them, like read it and then read the longer one again, but it would just be a big undertaking.
That'd be a huge project.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that could be like a reading vlog type of deal. I am so scared to do vlogs. I've never done a vlog on my channel. It's something that I've never. I don't know, like, because usually when I'm reading a book, it's like I don't want to stop, and this is why I don't tab either. I don't want to stop what I'm reading to go pick up the tab, get the correct colored tab, and then because I know people tab for various different reasons. It's like, oh, I like this line, or I like this idea, or I like this theme.
This is important.
And yeah, this is important. This is, a good story element. This is done poorly. This is what like. There's tons of reasons to tab a book, and I would rather just read the book. So I don't do it. And then usually by the time I'm done reading, I'm ready to conk out. Like, I don't want to turn on a camera.
I had a lot of fun vlogging, but I only find it fun if I can talk about spoilers, because I want to react to the things that are happening, and I don't want to like half react to the things that are happening. So it has to be something that enough people have read to care about watching someone's spoiler vlog. Like for a channel my size, you're not going to get that many people watching them anyway. But like the Dresden ones were super fun because there was like a solid little following of people who really enjoyed the reading vlogs. They were really fun to do. The reactions were fun, but it has to be a specific kind of story or series in order for it to work that way. I like watching non-spoiler vlogs. Like, I watch a couple of non-fantasy, or at least not exclusively fantasy booktubers, and they do vlogs and they're non-spoiler, but I also just like their daily routine. Like, they'll cook something and then they'll get dressed and then they'll read a book. And I like that kind of like lifestyle stuff, but I can't do those kinds of vlogs because I have a really—
You've got kids running around trying to destroy the house.
Exactly. Yeah. Also true.
I can't vlog right now because we're currently potty training my daughter. So we're having to do the aggressive potty training where it's just it's aggressive because like she's not wearing anything from the waist down. We've just got to trust that she's going to go and do her thing. And obviously I can't vlog that for obvious reasons.
True. So I was the very neglectful kind of parent. I didn't potty train either of my kids. I just waited until they were old enough to want to go to the potty. And then they did, and that was it. So they both sorry for everybody who's watching for book stuff, but they both peed the first day, and then nothing else. Like, there was no accidents, no anything. It was just one day they said, I'm going to go pee. And I said, okay. And they did it. And then that was it. So it was a very, if there is a lazy approach to parenting, that is what I
but if it works, it works. Like, no shame. It is like, how what is your routine like reading with kids? Because I mean, like, there have been times where I'll get super excited and I'll send you a Voxer and you're like, yeah, I'm at the pool. Like, that's happened.
So it's different now. My kids are a lot older than yours now. So my kids are now 7 and 8. So they can both read, and they can both read independently. So they both read on their own. So right now, for example, this morning, I really had to read Mistborn. So in my house, and it's always been this way, I'm a morning person. Andrew is not. So from the time that they were born, Andrew would get up with them during the night. I would get up with them in the morning, and it was a really easy trade-off at all times. And Andrew's a stay-at-home dad, so he has always been home. So that makes it kind of like doubly easy. So like this morning, for example, I got up at 6:30 with Isaac, and Juliet was still sleeping. So we hung out for a little bit, played some Yahtzee because he's obsessed with it. She came out, had breakfast. Andrew woke up at 9 o'clock, and I said, I need to read Mistborn. So I'm going into my room, and I shut the door. And because my kids are, like glue, they need to be by me at all times, even if it's just to breathe. They're like, Mom, let us in. Why are you hiding? I was like, I'm not hiding, I'm reading. But if you want to come in, then you have to read too. Like, I need to concentrate. So they both just came in with a book, and we were all in there for like an hour just reading. So it's a lot easier now because I can do that. When they were younger, I never used to listen to audiobooks, so I didn't have that option. If I had listened to them back then I probably would have, but I used to just do it at nap time. I'm not a very, what do you call it? I don't know. Like, I'm not a very homey kind of person. Like, I'm not the kind of person who spends their time like cleaning and scrubbing and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, it's good enough right now. This is fine. Let's just sit down and read. The kids are in bed. Let's enjoy life. Because I feel like it would be very stressful to be the kind of person who needs to spend like the 4 hours after they go to sleep, like doing all of these tasks. I have enough tasks. So that was how I
kind of clean as I go. So it's just like, okay, trash is piling up. Let's collect all the recycling. Okay, the dishes are piling up. Let's collect all the dishes. Let's do the dishes. And then I can do that because I'm constantly listening to audiobooks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's rough because I, you know, my daughter, so it's weird. We got into this routine with my daughter where I would put her to bed, and then after about 4 to 5 months, if anybody else tried, it was a no-go. It was a no-go. And so now she's 2.5 approaching 3, and I'm still the one putting her to bed. I think it's happened twice where other people have been able to put her to bed. And it's not so much that they put her to bed, it's that she stopped complaining and went to bed. And so it's kind of, I'm always listening to audio, but at the same time, like, it's interesting kind of trying to read so much, which is one of the reasons why I want to cut back. I don't want to be the parent that my kids remember always having headphones in.
Right.
Like, I want you to be able to talk to me. Like, come speak to me about your problems. I promise I'll turn off the audiobook. Like, but no, it's definitely an interesting experience trying to read as much as we do with kids.
Yeah.
And
I think the fact that I read quickly is helpful. So
you read really fast.
So I don't, even if I don't get to read as much, I can read through it quickly. So I don't do a lot of like daytime reading unless they are going to read at the same time as me. But like I said, they're very sticky. Like they always want to be there. So I'm mostly doing things with them in the daytime. So now I don't read a lot in the day. It's mostly in the night.
Okay. Well, I mean, fair enough. I can listen to audio at work. So, because I this is my work space. I work in my book collection, which is an awful idea. I do not recommend doing it. For the main fact that, like, you're looking at your books and you're like, oh, I don't have that book in that, and the sequel to that book. I can go ahead and purchase that while I'm sitting here. And it's a terrible idea. Speaking of, I'm going to backtrack to Dresden a little bit because it made me think of it. Are there any series, because like I read Dresden pre-booktube, like pre-booktube. Are there any series that like you've wanted to talk about, but like you need to do a reread because it was before booktube and you just haven't gotten around to it yet?
Yeah, so I read most of the things that I love before booktube. I have a really hard time shifting the things that I like. Like if you look at my top favorite series and those kinds of videos, like they're mostly old books because it's really hard for me to kick something out that I have loved for a long time. Like I am a monogamist in all things. Like I ate the same lunch every day for like every year that I was in school. I like the things that I like, and that is all that I want. So it's really hard for new books to come in and kick them off. So definitely, I haven't read Lord of the Rings in forever. I would love to talk about those, but I would need to reread them in order to talk about any of the things that I would want to talk about. Even Dark Tower, I reread a couple of them when I was doing like discussions with Philip and everybody. But I haven't reread the end of that series since it came out. So really? I would love to do like ranking videos and some theory videos, and like there are things that I would love to do with Dark Tower, but I feel like I would need to reread the end of the series in order to do it. What else would I really like to read that I haven't read for a long time? I'm trying to think of, like, there are definitely classic fantasy books that I would love to talk about that it's been a long time, but I don't know that I want to reread them. Like I really liked Shannara when I was young. I don't think I would take the time to reread the Shannara series, but it would be fun to be able to talk about, like, I know broadly what happened in the various sub-series, but not well enough to, talk about them individually. So that's the sad part, right? Is that you want to keep reading new things in order to keep up with the content, but the old books are still good. I do really want to reread The Talisman. I'm scared to reread it because most Stephen King fans seem to hate it, and I loved it. It was my first Stephen King book, and
so it was okay. Well,
yeah, and I always used to say that it was one of my favorite books, but it's been so long since I read it, and I wonder, like, would I hate it now? I hope not. I don't think so, but it's. I do want to reread it.
That's kind of how I feel about, because I used to read a lot of mysteries and thrillers. I started with fantasy. I moved on to like mysteries and thrillers, and there was a series by Douglas Russ and Lincoln Child, called The Pendergast. I think the third book is The Cabinet of Curiosities, and I've read that book like 5 times. I loved it every single time. I haven't read it in 5 years, and I'm scared to go back and try it again. So it's just yeah, there's always that little bit of fear of, okay, well, I've read 300 books since this last happened. Like,
how am I going to feel
what's going to
about it?
happen? Yeah.
Yeah, there are definitely book series that I have read that I wonder how I would feel about them, like Night Angel. I know Mike hated that series this year by Brett Winks, but I look back on Goodreads, I'm pretty sure I gave it like 5 stars. I really enjoyed it when I read it, but I read it a long time ago, and I'm like, did I just like it because I was itching for some like assassin fantasy, or, you know, how did I truly feel about it? But it's interesting to know. Like, do you find that even in a year, so when I look back, and that's the fun thing about keeping a reading journal. I look back at some of the books now that I gave like 5 stars this year, and I wonder, do I still feel that way about them even a couple of months down the road? Like, do I remember everything about this book? Did it really actually stick out to me? Like, it'd be a fun project to go back next year and look at the 5 stars from this year and think, like, which of these actually truly still feel like they were 5-star reads?
So it's rare I'm going to ever retain all the details of a book. I mean, this last year I read 210 books, which is, we've already established that's nonsense. I'm not going to remember all the details. Like, I mean, within a couple days, like character names and like nations and specific like made up titles, like you might call them a landholder, you might call them a baron, you might call them whatever. Those details rarely stick out in my mind. What I tend to remember is the feeling that I had while reading it. And so those are the books that I remain like excited about. There's Cruel Gods by Trudy Skies, The Iron Crown by Ella McRae. There's Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. There's The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, which, don't get me wrong, is still very recent. But then Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I don't care what people have to say about Wheel of Time. I'm still going to love Wheel of Time. Although I've been very critical on it on my current reread. I've been very critical. It started out as kind of a read along, and it's turned mostly into a buddy read between Nico and I. We're on book 10. And I've pretty much complained the entire time.
It's like, a rant along now, not a read along.
It's a rant along. But at the same time, like it's so cemented there on my ranking list that like I think I'm just gonna have to move it from 1 to 0, and just like it holds a place of honor. And then I can like move something else that, like, you know, maybe has aged a little better. I remember Bloodsong. Bloodsong, I actually probably remember a fair bit of content from Bloodsong. Then Stephen Arian's Coward, I remember a fair bit about. Warlord Chronicles, Lord of the Silver Bow. So there are a lot of books that I really remember very well. But if you were to ask me what happened in Tower Lord instead of Bloodsong, like I remember Bloodsong better than I remember Tower Lord.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I guess when you're young, you reread books a lot, or at least I did when I was younger. And the details stick so much easier. Like I read them so many times that I retained so many of those details.
Yeah, like I mean, I read Dragonlance the first like 3 books probably nine times. Like I would just keep going to the library and checking them out until my mom got tired of driving me to the library, so she just took me to the bookstore to buy them. And then I wore through those copies, and it's just it's interesting because I then went back in my 30s to do a reread of it, and I did not like them. And it's one of those things where like nostalgia is one heck of a drug.
Which is sad, right? It's sad to have that experience. That's why sometimes I wonder if it's better to just hold off. Colton, it looks like there was some Dresden talk. We actually didn't talk about Dresden. We just talked about series we read before book 2, but we can talk a little bit about Dresden.
Yeah, we can talk Dresden.
This was the Year of the Law, right? The novella came out this year.
It's the only thing I haven't read.
Oh, you haven't read it yet?
I haven't read The Law.
But you were not happy with Battleground, correct?
No, I wasn't.
That's where we're gonna disagree in a big way. Battlegrounds is my second favorite Dresden book, I think.
Is it really? So it's funny. Dresden has kind of merged into a just amalgamous blob to me. Like, of course, I remember changes, and I remember winter. Like, I remember everything post 10 pretty well.
Yep.
But the first 10 just all kind of, you might as well put it into a blender and hit mix.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, I remember the major plot points and things of that nature, and I loved Dresden all the way up through Skin Game.
Yeah.
And then we had The Long Wait, and this is one of the series I read very, 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 very pre-booktube. So I read those books over and over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
I've probably read changes at least 4 to 5 times.
Yeah.
That's how far I've gotten through, and I start over from the beginning each and every time. I have to go in order. I can't be that guy. And then when we got to the most latest releases, which is Peace Talks and Battlegrounds, I was liking Peace Talks, but I feel Dresden has gotten slightly long in the tooth to the point where, like, well, actually, hold on. I'm gonna walk that back a little bit because I want to make sure I'm being concise on what my issues were. Some of my issues were that I could tell the book had been split in two.
Yeah.
I could. It was noticeable where there was a couple fillers put in to give it an ending for Peace Talks and a start for Battleground. Like, there was some filler in those stories, which made them weaker, in my opinion. And then, of course, I'm just mad about choices made in Battleground because I'm crotchety and I spent 10 years, wanting something only to have somebody take my toy from me.
Yep.
And so, I'm a little bitter about it, but that's not the reason I didn't like it. It was just there was so much action in Dresden in Battlegrounds that literally the series is known for its dynamic pacing. Like, it has its ups and it has its downs, all within a book. There's Harry's got to lay low, Harry's got to take a breath, Harry's pushing too hard, Harry's doing this, Harry's trying to figure this out, he's juggling 3 or 4 things. And that book just felt like straight up action. Like, it felt like, I don't know. It was a bit much for me. It was sensory overload.
It is a lot, for sure. And you're either going to love it or you're not, right? You have to like that approach. So I think that's fair.
They are good books. They are good books. I've even read Full Moon. Like, people who say you can skip them the first 2 after your first read through, I don't do that. Like, I've read Stormfront, and I love that frog demon in Stormfront. I love that frog demon, and I don't know why. It's not even a major character. No. I just think it's cool. And it's one of the few books that got its own episode in the TV show.
Right.
Because did you watch the TV show?
No, my dad has, though. He saw the TV show before he read the series, which is hilarious.
I got turned on to it because of the TV show. Yeah. At the time, I was probably 18, and my brother-in-law was like, "Hey, you like fantasy? Have you heard of this TV show?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "It's like an urban wizard," and I was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." I didn't know what urban fantasy was at the time. I'd been reading epic fantasy my entire life. And he was just like, "Oh yeah, it's this cool TV show. It's got Paul Blackthorne in it." Which I didn't know who Paul Blackthorne is, so that meant nothing to me. And then I started watching the show, thought it was awful. And then, like, when I got to the end of it, I was just like, well, is there going to be any more? He's like, oh no, it's been canceled. I was like, then why'd you make me watch this? I was mad because, like, even though it wasn't fantastic, it was still entertaining.
Yeah.
And so then he was like, well, it's based off a book series. I was like, have you read him? He's like, no. So I went and I started reading the Dresden Files, and then I got hooked. I thought the books were infinitely better because in the show, Bob isn't a skull. Bob is a spirit.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he might reside in a skull, but he can, I don't fully remember. It's been 10 years since I watched the show, but there is a actor on screen playing Bob.
Interesting.
It's one of the biggest differences with the show. But I like Paul Blackthorne, so when I saw him on The Flash, I got really excited. It was the first time I'd seen him in a long time.
Colton asked me what my dad's favorite ones are. I'm going to send him a text message. I can probably
You're texting your dad?
But I'll text him and we'll see if he answers.
Oh, favorite top Dresden books. It's got to be the Denarians. The Denarian books are always my favorite. And I think I've said that correctly, but the Denarius, the Order of the Denarius, I believe is what it's called, is just absolutely fascinating. And I never talk about Dresden on my channel. I've read like Side Jobs. I've read what's the other one called?
Keep talking.
Keep talking? No, that's not what it's called. Somebody in the comments will let me know. But I've read the two ones. One's got a Sasquatch in it, which is really cool. She's calling her dad now to get the answer, Colton. What have you done? But yeah, I would have to say my favorites are probably, of course, Changes is going to be on that list. I like Winter Night and I like Ghost Story. I really like Ghost Story. I also like Turncoat. The one with the one where Polka Will Never Die debuts. I really like that one. The one where Butters really kind of comes to the forefront and becomes a main character. I really enjoyed, Briefcases. There we go. Side Jobs and Briefcases. Like, for some reason, I just can't make those work in my brain. But it's funny because while I'm waiting for her answer, Dresden used to be my palate cleanser. And okay, there we go.
You don't have to stop. You can start. You can finish your
sentence. No. I was about to segue into Drew Hayes. So
okay. So his favorite characters, if we're not talking about Harry, because Harry's the main character, Murphy is his favorite character, and Molly is his second favorite character. And his favorite book is Battleground, followed by Deadbeat.
The fact that Mouse isn't one of his favorite characters already means his opinion is wrong. Mouse is the bestest boy.
Mouse is the bestest boy. I love Mouse.
Evie is trying to stir the pot.
Elric, right? Andrew's favorite Elric book is what's it called? The Weird of the Wolf?
Oh yeah, I love that trashy book.
Is that the last one?
The Weird and the White Wolf.
The Weird of the White Wolf.
I hated that book so much. I hated it. I was so mad. And it's one of those. So I didn't know when I was reading it that it was like novellas and short stories stitched together. I didn't know that. And for people who are watching, for this sudden segue into Elric, basically we are doing a buddy read with Sarah, Evie from She Was Only Evie, Himvar. Is Joanna as well, right? Yeah, Joanna and I are all doing this buddy read, and we're having a live show in a couple weeks about the first collection. But you get a sneak preview here that I hated the fourth book. I hated it. I gave it 1 star, and I don't hand out 1 stars. I don't do it.
I didn't even know you gave it 1 star.
I gave it 1 star. It's one of those rare instances where I thought it felt like a fleshed out outline is what it felt like. It felt like we've got this outline of a story we want to write, but because these have already been published, I'm not going to bother to make it a cohesive story. I'm just going to sandwich a bunch of things together, and it kind of fits together, but it's only 120 pages, and let's just have every woman on the page throw herself at Elric, despite the start of the story, which just tonally didn't feel genuine. And then also you gotta, in this particular bind up, I believe the Weird and the White Wolf short stories and novellas was written first, because Michael Moorcock wrote these all over the place.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, in the bind up, Elric is placed first because it's chronological. Elric was written after the fact, and it is much more fleshed out, much more polished, and it has a cohesive narrative.
Yeah.
And the start of Weird and the White Wolf was over like that. And it threw out everything from Elric in the blink of an eye. And in doing so, also made 0 sense.
It's very Conan-like. And I'm just I imagined Elric as Flash Gordon for these last 3 these short stories, because you're right. He'll just like, he barrels in somewhere, and then there's a woman who obviously wants to throw herself at him, and it's just, it is.
But it's not appropriate with the way that story starts.
No, it is not. You're right. Tonally, it doesn't.
Tonally, it doesn't work.
Any
sense. If it was maybe 300 pages more, you could probably make me believe it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it was. There's some cool ideas though. The weirder the Elric books get, the more I end up liking them, because for me, the first one was kind of bland. Although after discussing it, I liked it more because of all the things that everybody had to say about it. So that was one pro to getting together to talk about it. But like that one and the one before it were both very strange, but I kind of liked the weirdness.
That's fair. So we've got, Colton says that your Murphy opinions are wrong. I don't know what your Murphy opinions are. So you can vouch for me those, because we won't air those live on camera and get you canceled. I'll say, what is one series that we wish got more attention on BookTube? And then I will answer Sci-Fi Rogue's question after that.
Afterwards. One book or
more
series.
Attention.
Let's see. I'm gonna try. You know what I don't like? This is not a series. What I don't like is the way that people talk about YA on BookTube. Because I'm 100% fine if people don't like YA. The reasons that people use to justify not liking it drive me bananas sometimes. And then someone will read like YA by Brandon Sanderson or Joe Abercrombie or someone and be like, well, for YA, this, I guess, is the best that we have to offer. I'm like, but it's not. You just don't know what there is to offer because you don't read any of it. Like, there's actually some really good YA books that don't do the things that people hate about YA because they were either written a long time ago or they just focus on different things and they're actually really good. But, if you don't read across a whole genre, then it's going to be hard to know everything that genre has to offer. Like, Nation by Terry Pratchett is YA, and that is excellent. Robin McKinley writes YA, which reads like really good, classic, nature-based fantasy. Like, there's a lot of YA authors who don't do the things that I think when people say they don't like YA, like there are certain tropes that I always assume that they're talking about. And I totally understand and support that. And I also understand if you don't like YA, like that's totally fine.
Right.
But I just think sometimes the way that people talk about YA, they're talking about a very particular part of YA that is not all of YA.
So it's curious, the segue into YA. First, let me answer the question first. We've got two answers.
Yep.
Wistful Ascending, JCM. It's getting some, but not enough. And then The Soul's Instruments by Mark Holloway.
I have a Wistful Ascending piece of information for you, Andrew. Just give me 2 seconds. Look at this. But I'm going to put it up to my camera. I bought it for my husband for Christmas, and he started it.
Yes!
And he was reading it.
That's fantastic. But in terms of YA, I can only come from my perspective. By the time I even heard the term YA, I was already in my 20s.
Yes.
And YA stands for young adult.
Yeah.
And so I feel like because it's a marketing ploy, YA is supposed to be targeted towards young adult. And for my peers or the people who, I talk to regularly, we are mid-20s to 30s. I don't really talk to a lot of teenagers do I talk to a lot? No, I don't talk to a lot of teenagers. I have to think, like, do I have any teenage friends? But it's one of those things where it's a marketing ploy, and because it's literally the term young adult, I think it gets a stigma where, like, because I held up this book earlier, The Dark Trials, by T. James Kelly. This is YA. It is, but it doesn't do a lot of those tropes that people hate. It actually subverts them on purpose. And I loved it. I actually got to talk to the author because the author is a friend of Bryce from Shelf Centered. And we did a whole live show and author interview with him. And it was a lot of fun. And I'll read anything he puts out. But I think this is currently unself-pub because he's trying to pitch it to trad publishers. But
nice. Someone talked about, who was it up here? Caitlin said that she's reading Michael Scott's Secret of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel. That series is really fun. So I read it a long time ago, but it is one that I am super excited for Juliet and Isaac to read. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Andrew, but it's a series that centers around some kids who find out that they're friends with the immortal Nicholas Flamel, which I'm sure like most of us heard about because it, like, from Harry Potter, like
Harry Potter, yeah.
That name, but there's so many historical characters woven into the story. So like Shakespeare shows up, Machiavelli is in it. Like there's a lot of really cool historical figures in the book series. And it's one that I wish that I had read as a kid, because I feel like it would have made me really interested in certain parts of history, which I think is a good thing for middle grade or YA to do, because it would have made me want to learn about things that I didn't know anything about. So I'm glad that Caitlin brought that up, because that is a series that I absolutely want to read with the kids when they're a little bit older.
Nice. And then Sci-Fi Rogue wants to know if there's any other urban fantasy recommendations. Yes. Kate Daniels by Ilona Andrews. It's got a heavy romance subplot to it, but it's not the main subplot. Fantastic post-apocalyptic urban fantasy. And then I'm currently getting ready to read, where is it? Where's my NBR shelf? Here it is. I've got shelves everywhere. Then there's Alex Varys by Benedict Jacka. Mm-hmm. And then this one as well. I'm getting ready to read this. I've heard nothing but good things about The Last Smile in Sunder City by Luke Arnold, which is the Fetch Phillips series. And then I've got some other ones that as soon as you ask me a question, I'm going to forget the answer. I've got a top 5 urban fantasy video that is old as dirt and looks terrible, but it's there on the channel.
But it's not one that you locked away. Colton bought me the first 2 Monster Hunter books for
Monster Hunter International.
Said that they would be good fill-ins for Dresden. So I'm looking forward to starting that one.
I think Varys would be a better fill-in for Dresden. Monster Hunter International is more machismo than Dresden is. It's all very much big muscles and guns. Shoot the monster. Nice. It's very macho. I mean, the author is a gun nut, so he will describe the make, the model, and the caliber of the bullet that they're using in that book. I've read the first 7.
But Patrick's from the here. Same. Happy New Year, Patrick.
Patrick, where's he hiding? Oh, I need to scroll down. Where is he? There he is. Boom. All right, Patrick, I'm going to get you on here eventually to talk some Cradle. But Hard Magic by the same author. This is the Grim Noir Chronicles. It's an alternative history/fantasy. I really loved this one, and it's got a noir feel to it. I mean, it's grim noir, but it's fantastic, and it's a great trilogy. Oh, hello from the past. Yeah, that's right, because it's already New Year's where Patrick's at.
Is this a Death t-shirt that you're wearing, Andrew?
Yes.
Amazing. I should have worn my Death of Rats t-shirt. We could have matched.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have interesting views on Discworld. That's when I was making my way through, and nothing has been able to recapture the magic of the City Watch for me.
The City Watch.
Yeah, I loved, which you can ignore Alan. You can listen to the audiobook. You can 100%. Am I freezing at all?
You are freezing a tiny bit for me now.
Okay. I don't know why. Hold on. Let me go see if I'll be right back. Just talk to people in the comments.
I will talk to people in the comments. One thing, so I know Andrew doesn't love the Death books, and something I hear people say about the Death books a lot is that they're upset that Death doesn't show up as much. And I'm actually fine with Death being not a side character in his own story, but not there all the time on page, because I think that the humor that I get from Death and what I like about Death, I'm happy to have it in the amount that I have it. Like the amount of times that I get to see him, it just makes his stuff land even better for me. So that is probably why I don't have that same complaint about Death. Yes, Matt, if Mort showed up more, that would have been awesome. So that I would have enjoyed that too. But Susan, I love Susan. So Susan's my favorite. And I love the Death of Rats too. Let's see. I hope your husband enjoys. Is this back to... Oh, Wistful Sending. Oh, Joseph, you wrote Wistful Sending. I didn't even notice that. Awesome. I'm sure he's going to like it. Everything that people have told me about the series makes it sound like something that he is going to really love. So I'm excited. I'm hopeful that he's going to read it and love it, because then I'm hoping he's going to talk with me about it. He's really shy and he has not wanted to come on and talk about anything yet. And I'm hoping that Wistful Sending will be the thing that will push him to actually come and talk to me about something.
Okay, so I think StreamYard just hates me. I've gone and unplugged 2 TVs. I've turned off my work computer. I've disconnected my phone from Wi-Fi and my Kindle. I've got fiber internet. I don't know what's going on.
Andrew, I'm in a basement in like the bleak wasteland of Newfoundland, and my internet is okay. I don't understand why
I don't know.
Not working for you.
I don't know. The last time I was on StreamYard, there is something about StreamYard that just does not like my internet. Because I get 500 up and 500 down. I have no idea
why StreamYard is acting this way.
I don't know. But yes, Nico is correct. The Death books, I like Death as a character. My problem with the Death books is I wanted more Death.
See, this is exactly what I talked about when you were gone. I am fine with not having as much Death, because then it makes it more impactful when he's there. Like, it makes me laugh more when he's on the page.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just moments where I'm like, I'm not caring about this storyline.
That's fair.
Like, the Reaper Man, though. Reaper Man was fantastic.
I love Reaper Man.
I really enjoy Reaper Man and that story aspect. And then I started The Witches, and I really enjoyed, I believe, Weird Sisters is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going off of memory because I gave my books to Nico. I really loved Weird Sisters. And then from then on, it started going downhill for me, to the point where I felt one of the 3 witchers got character assassinated, and a choice was made that just I didn't agree with. And you know, if people like that, that's fine. But for me, it didn't work. It was a non-starter, and so that is just something that, you know, so far. The City Watch is what I've loved. The only City Watch book I have any issues with is Thud.
Right.
Thud. Snuff is great. Fifth Element's pretty good. Jingo's all right. And then Guards, Men at Arms, Feet of Clay are all fantastic. Night Watch is mind-blowingly good. And yeah.
Will you do any of the standalones then, Andrew? Like try Small Gods or Pyramids or something like that?
Oh yeah. I'll get back to them. I will. Equal Rights was good too. Nico reminded me about Equal Rights, so I liked Equal Rights and Weird Sisters.
Totally fair. I have enjoyed Death. I'm super pumped for the City Watch because everybody seems to like it the most.
I'm kind of on the fence because I listened to some of the audiobooks before they redid them, and I really liked those performances. I didn't like the new performances for the Witches books. I didn't like it. And you can't find the old ones anymore. Like they're gone. They're gone. Like you don't have an option.
And so who does the new ones? The person that I listened to for Death was Nigel Planer, and I really liked his narration.
The new one is she was from Torchwood. Hold on. And then there's also Bill Nye. But Bill Nye is wasted. So they're like, we got Bill Nye to do the Discworld audiobooks. You wasted Bill Nye is what you did. He only does the footnotes. That's all he does. And at least in The Witchers, he's only used for the footnotes. And it's always this weird chime that breaks up the story to let you know that there's a footnote, and they didn't used to do that. And so whenever there was a footnote, I was just getting distracted by it.
Right.
I don't know.
That's
we'll see.
We'll
see. Maybe I was in a reading slump and I was forcing myself. I have been writing Burnout for a long time. Yeah, Eve Miles. No, not Eve Miles. Discworld narrators. Merlin narrates the Wizard's book. Bill Nye, the voice of the footnotes. Fleabag star. Bill Nye is the voice of the footnotes. Yeah, I knew that. That's what I just said. Who narrates the Discworld series?
Indira
Indria Varma. That's who I was listening to. And she does an okay job, but it's just, Andy Serkis does some of them too. Huh.
Interesting.
And Colin Morgan. Colin Morgan is a fantastic. I loved Merlin when I never finished Merlin because I couldn't bear to have it come to an end.
You knew what was coming.
I knew. Well, I mean, it's an Arthur story, so you know how it's going to end as long as you're remotely familiar with the Arthur story. And I couldn't deal with the heartbreak, and so like I've got 2 episodes left,
Aww.
and I refuse to finish that series because then it's always in progress and there's always more.
That's fair. I do that with book series all the time. If I like them too much, it's actually hard for me to finish them.
Was Indra Varma in Game of Thrones, Kyle? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying what character did she play? Oh no, she was one of the Dornish. She was in season 3 and 4. I know who she was. She was in Dorne. Okay, I remember. See, I watched Game of Thrones. Yeah, I'm hip. I'm cool. I'm old. Yeah, I remember her in there now. I was just like, where was she located in? Oh yeah, she's Dornish. Yes, there are new audios, Nancy, for the Discworld. They've been kind of rolling out over the last year. Or are they all out by now? I don't know. I haven't. Patrick would probably know. He's got his fantasy news thing. I do not.
On the go. Yeah, there's so many good audio now. Like, it makes me want to listen to so many things. I really want to listen to Andy Serkis's Lord of the Rings audio, but there's just so many things. So many things.
I know Joanna really stands by a different audio set for Lord of the Rings. Okay. She messaged me and she said they do like the movie soundtracks on these audios. I think it's Graphic Audio, I think, is the one that she recommended. And with the graphic audios, it's like full cast. Andy Serkis does a good job. Yeah. The problem is it's been so long since I read Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I still love The Hobbit. Like I did the Andy Serkis for The Hobbit. Fantastic experience. And then Lord of the Rings, Tom Bombadil for the Fellowship of the Ring is rough. I don't care how merry of a fellow he is. It's still hard to get through.
Disagree.
And
hard disagree.
Hard disagree?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Well, the point is Andy Serkis is not a singer, and Tom Bombadil is.
Right. So he tries to sing those parts.
It'll be like, Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow. And it's just like, okay, I get it, Andy. Like, I understand. Like,
that's amazing. Does he sing the parts in The Hobbit too? Like the spider parts? Like old Tom Naughty, old big body, those like spider.
I don't remember. I just remember because it's literally he's singing from the diaphragm. Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow, and it like he comes in like super strong, and it's just like, okay, like this is a bit much. Sorry.
You've injured my lungs. They're not recovered yet.
I'm so sorry. Emily is saying that's where she DNF'd.
So much hate for Tom Bombadil.
I don't hate Tom Bombadil. I just don't think he tonally fits at certain points. And the graphic audios, Joanna is saying they are free on Spotify.
Nice. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. See, Anita's.
You're pretty close. I love it.
That's how he does it. It's from the diaphragm, and it's just and that's how Tom Bombadil talks.
Oh, nice. I need to get the kids to listen to this. They still like yell out lyrics from The Hobbit. They'll still yell out like the spider song lyrics at each other. Like if they're upset, they'll insult each other using Bilbo's insults for the tree spiders.
I don't remember if Serkis sang that particular part. I think those were done more in poem.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a couple months at this point, and I've already listened to like a few hundred hours of different audio. But yeah, I don't know. Andy Serkis is definitely, he does a good job. his Misty Mountains is a bit rough when he does.
Right.
He does do the singing chant of Misty Mountains, but like you've got to be a baritone to do Misty Mountains correct.
To be able to get that, to get it
Like
on.
the deeper your voice and the more your voice sounds like a box of rocks that you're shaking back and forth, the better it is.
Nico, my whole family uses Lord of the Rings slang as like part of their everyday speech. Like my dad, if you talk about something my dad doesn't like, he calls it orc talk. So like when I was a kid, if I had come home and I talked about, I don't know, it could have been anything from like a boy to like fights or like something negative, and he'd be like, Sarah, get that orc talk. He still says it all the time. I want to hear that orc talk in my kitchen. So it's just like everyday speech. Patrick needs to not be here and say sad things. He needs to be here and say nice things, because
Patrick, you are more than welcome to stay here. You're more than welcome. I appreciate you, Patrick. But yeah, I don't know why StreamYard hates me. I really wish. It says connection is unstable. But I don't.
Patrick. It hurts. It hurts when your friends are mean, but that's all you can do.
I mean,
oh, now I need to download this audiobook just so I can listen to that part.
Just so you can listen to that. It's if you have Scribd, it's on Scribd, I think, as well.
Is it? Okay.
Awesome. I think so. It's on US Scribd. I never understand the whole regional.
The regional
kind
thing?
of restrict. Yeah.
Yes, that has made me sad because I can't get the last audiobook for the God King Chronicles, the like Mike Brooks series. I wanted to finish that series and read book 3, and Canada doesn't have the 3rd audiobook. I'm mad about it.
I that was one of those series that I kept picking up. I was like, I'm gonna read this someday, and I'd stick it back on my shelf. And so I finally had to admit to myself, Andrew, you're not gonna read this. You're playing yourself. Quit being a fool.
This will get Patrick ranting again because we both hated the same thing about this series. So one thing that Mike Brooks does really well is like cultural and social world building. So if you're at all interested in that kind of stuff, like social structure and the way that cultures meld and how they stand apart and what it means when you bring people together, like that part of the story is really good. Like anybody who likes sociology, anthropology, any of that stuff, I think that if they're fantasy fans, they would really like Mike Brooks' series because he does a really good job with it. But one of the groups of people, the dialect that they have, they talk about themselves in the 3rd person, and they always call themselves this man. So I would say like, this man is having a discussion on BookTube today, or this man is going to pick up his cup and, drink a glass of wine. And like, it just keeps going and going. So after I read it, it is all Patrick and I could talk about. Like whenever we would send messages back and forth to each other, I'd be like, this man really hates this. And it just like descended into crisis, but I got used to it. Patrick did not, so he stopped and I kept going.
Yeah, I heard Patrick didn't. Well, when I saw the author had like one of the biggest mohawks I've ever seen in my life.
Very
like
true.
I was just like, wait, what? It's like
it's intense, yeah.
It's like, and it's like 80s, like
impressive.
They took the super glue and all the way back. Like, how do you sleep like that?
Presumably, you watch the jump back before you go to sleep.
All the way back. I didn't like being that far away from the camera. It was weird. I miss you. Anyway, I'm back. But yeah, so have you had any books that kind of surprised you this year? Like just completely knocked your socks off?
Yeah, but most of them weren't fantasy. So Anne of Green Gables, I listened to the Audible exclusive for Anne of Green Gables, which was narrated by Rachel McAdams. It was amazing. Can't believe I did not read Anne of Green Gables as like a young Canadian girl because it was fantastic. I read a work of literary fiction, good night, Patrick, called A Ghost in the Throat, which is about motherhood. And that was also excellent. I listened to that one on audio too, and it's narrated by an Irish narrator, and the author is Irish as well. And it just works really well. And they read like the book is about this woman who is obsessed with an epic Irish poem. And the epic Irish poem is about a historical woman in Irish history whose husband dies, and the poem is about like how she feels after he dies. And it's like this very intense, like dramatic series of events. But the poet, I forget what her name is, Irene someone maybe, has been like mostly lost to history. And so it's about this mother who's feeling like very lost and subsumed by her identity as a mom, trying to explore her love of this poem and this poet and what it means. And it's like this melding of two things, of the poem and the poet, and then this woman and motherhood. And it's so good. It's a really short audiobook, but if you like literary fiction, you should absolutely listen to it. It was amazing, and it totally surprised me. Red Country was a big surprise because I went in expecting it to be like the weakest of the standalones, and it was actually my favorite first law book that I had read in the first, 6 or whatever I had read since then.
Because it's the best first law book.
It's so good. It was fantastic. And then I also was really surprised by Sharp Ends, because I had also heard people be like, it's Joe Abercrombie, so it's good, but short stories are not really his thing. And I loved it because, well, there was a short story from the perspective of a character from Red Country, which I loved. There were new characters, or at least like mostly new characters, that were introduced in Sharp Ends. And I loved those characters. And I loved it when they would repeatedly come back in the stories. And the last story was amazing, changes your perspective on so many things from the entire first trilogy. Like the fact that you get that one short story that resonates so much and that forces you to reflect on characters that you thought you knew really well from the original trilogy, I thought it was amazing. And it surprises me that people don't like it, because it's great. What's wrong with people?
I don't know. One of my biggest surprises is, if I can reach it, Jesus, I'm super like extending, is I got recommended, or I just got offered Zeroed Out by Jacob Markov. And the author was just like, yeah, like I'm doing giveaways. I've got some copies. Like if people are interested, here, have it. And so I was like, yeah, sure, free book. I'm a sucker for a free book. The cover did not inspire me to love it at all.
It's a creepy
but
cover.
Like, yeah, well, it's a serial killer, cyberpunk serial killer book.
Makes sense.
And oh my god, it was so good. It was one of those like big brain kind of cyberpunk style of books with a like, where is humanity going? It tackles like AI, and then it ends on like one of those like big questions, and then just cuts to black and lets you kind of have that last thought. I was like, oh, that was so good. So good. So cool. I love that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Do you read a lot of cyberpunky kind of stuff?
No,
I
don't. It's funny. My sci-fi, hey, JR.
Hey. I've
got JR's book, I believe, if it's the same JR Carroll. I've got his audiobook that I need to get to.
Yes.
I'll get to it eventually. I promise. I'm just swamped. Where was I going? What was I saying?
You were talking about most surprising books? Cyberpunk. Then we went into cyberpunk.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So when it comes to sci-fi, sorry, my brain. When it comes to sci-fi, I don't tend to like a lot of hard sci-fi. I like space operas. Space operas are my jam. Like the closer to fantasy my sci-fi is, the better off I am. A lot of hard sci-fi just, I don't know. It gets too deep into the technical stuff, which is why I've struggled with Alistair Reynolds a lot. It's
like big ideas more so than character focus. That makes sense. So do you like Firefly, Andrew?
Yeah, love Firefly.
Yeah.
But that's also closer to a space opera. Yeah, because
absolutely.
it doesn't focus on the science. It's just, these are people, there's a spaceship, and we're going to tell a story. And so they never quite get into the nitty-gritty of what the science is in this new world. I do like Star Trek, but Star Trek also doesn't all the time. Like Star Trek is more about the characters, I feel, and the relationships. So it's hard sci-fi, but it kind of toes that line. And then Stargate is a space opera. I don't care. They say, hey, here's a made up element, and it does stuff. And then they're like, here's a little bit of science for like 3 minutes, and then they move on. And then Doctor Who is just wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. It's all gobbledygook.
The Hogfather movie that the BBC made reminded me a lot of Doctor Who. Like just the way that they put it together, like the British humor, the special effects, like it all seemed very Whovian to me. I don't know if have you watched the Hogfather movie?
I watched probably the first 45 minutes of it. And then I stopped myself because I realized that I hadn't read the book yet.
Right. And you didn't want to ruin the book.
Yeah, Colton's telling me to watch Battlestar Galactica. I've tried. It's not bad. I like the visuals. I like the story. It's just, it moves. I think the pacing of Battlestar Galactica, at least in the start, is very kind of glacial. And it's just like, here's a spaceship. There's people on it. There's soldiers. We're going to retire all of these spaceships. And then like, bam, apocalypse at the end of the first episode. And you're like, ah! And then it's like, hey, we've got to go find the fleet. So I've watched a couple episodes, but it's never been one to make me come back and like sit there on the edge of my seat.
Did you watch the really old, I mean, not really old, but like old comparatively speaking, what was it called? If there's any other people who are plus 30 here, it was a space opera, and there was a girl with like orange hair. She had like this little cube thing that used to be on the ship with her. Oh, what was it called? I need to ask my dad this too. What the heck was it? It wasn't Babylon 5, because that was one that my dad used to watch too. So I have seen a fair bit of Babylon 5, but what was that other one called?
There's Andromeda, there's Lex,
Lex. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about.
It might be Lex. I don't know. I remember. I'm not saying, okay, guys, I'm not saying Battlestar Galactica is bad. I never once. Oh, are you talking about The Fifth Element?
No, it was a show. I think it is Lex.
Okay. It was funny. I was just talking to
that is what I'm thinking about.
To Nancy about Lex a few days ago, I think. Yes, no, I understand people like Battlestar Galactica. Like, I'm not taking that from you. I have no opinions one way or the other. Like I said, good characters, great visuals. It's got Katie Sackhoff in it, so I can't say anything bad about it because, I mean, it's Katie Sackhoff. I like Katie Sackhoff. But yeah, no, I watched. What's that? Andromeda. Did you ever watch Andromeda? With Kevin Sorbo?
Nope.
No. Oh man, that was an interesting one. Did you watch Farscape?
No, I didn't watch a ton of TV when I was younger. So the shows that I would have watched, I watched Buffy and Angel with my dad. I watched Lex. I watched Babylon 5. And I really think that's it. Like there's not many other TV shows that I really watched.
I mean, I grew up on it. My mom was a Trekkie. So there was always Star Trek playing, but I was a Star Wars nerd living in a Star Trek house. So I grew up. I grew up watching both, and then my mom got me into Doctor Who, and into Stargate, and yeah, I didn't watch Farscape until it had been off air for 10 years. Oh, Sequest! I forgot about Sequest. I've seen a few episodes of Sequest. Sequest is it was a good show, but it was a bit on the kitschy side. But yeah, no, I don't know. It's been interesting. I need to watch more TV because there's all of these adaptations that are starting to come out, and I mean, with the whole Witcher stuff going on, and there's just the Wheel of Time. I just want Amazon Prime to stop making fantasy shows. That's what I would like.
You can stop having to watch them. I don't watch any TV, but I am excited to watch The Last of Us. That is an adaptation that I will watch.
I won't watch it.
No?
No.
How come?
I won't watch it. Just because I won't. No, it's just like literally right now. The one show that I want to watch that I haven't started yet is Castle Rock. That's what I want to watch. I want to watch Castle Rock. I want to watch Barry. I want to watch Doctor Who, of course. I've been rewatching Batman the Animated Series since Kevin Conroy passed. I forgot how good of an animated show that is.
Yeah.
Batman the Animated Series is a masterpiece.
DC does better animated stuff than Marvel most of the time.
Man, do we want to go down this rabbit hole? I'm so mad about Henry Cavill.
Oh, we're talking about Witcher now, are we?
Yeah, I'm just mad in general about DC firing him as Superman. I'm mad that he left The Witcher. Like, I'm happy he got Warhammer 40K. I don't know enough about Warhammer 40K to have a dog in that fight. Like, I'll watch it. I'll watch Warhammer 40K if it's got, you know, Henry Cavill in it. But I liked Ben Affleck's Batman. But there's an oversaturation, in my opinion, of superhero stuff. Like, it did really well.
Yeah.
And then it kind of jumped the shark a little bit, where it's just like, okay, have a new TV show every 3 weeks. They're all going to be miniseries. They're all going to be relevant. They're all going to fit in. And I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the bandwidth for it anymore.
Yeah, I have not watched any of those things, but Andrew watches them all. So if there's anything that I need to know before I watch a movie, then he'll just tell me what it is that I have to know. So that's helpful. I don't watch a lot of adaptations at all. I'm only interested in The Last of Us because it's kind of got Western type vibes. Like, I like the post-apocalyptic kind of setup there.
If the Mike Flanagan Dark Tower comes to fruition, are you excited for that?
Yes. I will. Yes. I will watch that. That is one that I will watch. And to be fair, I gave Lord of the Rings a chance. I watched the first episode and I was like, absolutely not. Like, I cannot.
I gave it 10 minutes and I was like, man, this is really pretty. I'm bored.
Yep. No. Did not happen. So it takes a lot for me to want to watch a TV show, and I will not. And yes, Evie, Pedro Pascal's in it too. So
this is the way.
Draw.
He's the Mandalorian. I'm sorry. That's who he is now. He's the Mandalorian. So when it came to Last of Us, it was kind of towards the end of my video game kind of career, as I'll put it. Because as soon as my daughter was born, like, I didn't have the energy, because I play like Dark Souls. Like, I'm that guy, where like I want to suffer while playing my video games, and you just can't do that around an infant.
Yep.
And so once she was born, I got out of the habit, and I tried playing Elden Ring, for a little bit, and I got about 2 hours into it, and as soon as she started crying, I just turned off the game and I never came back to it.
Yeah.
And Last of Us I didn't like the controls of Last of Us. Like, when it comes to Naughty Dog, I'm more of an Uncharted fan. That's the rare case of like, just give me a darn good story, because Nathan Drake was just awesome. Speaking of an adaptation I haven't watched, I haven't seen Tom Holland's Uncharted yet.
I also have not. I did not watch Logan because I knew that it was going to be sad. So
it wasn't even the last Wolverine movie, because he's back with Deadpool 3.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Disney tackling if the Fantastic Four hasn't happened yet, and it hasn't worked yet. Like, the first Fantastic Four is decent, but like Silver Surfer and then the reboot, and it's just like, please, it's like the Terminator. Please leave Terminator alone.
Just stop.
Yeah, it hasn't been good since Sarah Connor Chronicles, which that's probably when I stopped watching TV, is right around that time period. Like, I don't know. It's like, come up with, there's all of these books back here. There's all of these great ideas that you can work with. Do a Senlin Ascends story. That would be cool. Change the ending, but it would be cool. Change the ending. So, okay.
So, apparently we're going to watch Avatar soon, because I think Andrew believes that Juliet and Isaac are almost ready to watch it. So I will indeed be watching Avatar The Last Airbender all the way through sometime soon. Although because I already love Korra so much, I don't know if it'll overtake Korra for me, which
You watched Korra first?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I watched the first episode of Avatar.
3 times better. It's 3 times better than Korra.
I watched the first episode like a long time ago, and it was too young. And I was like, I do not like this. This is not for me. And just didn't watch any more. And then when Andrew and I started dating, he said that I would like Korra, so I did watch it. Actually, it was not when we started dating. That was a lie. It was when Korra came on Netflix. And I watched Korra, and I love Korra. And then he wanted me to go back and watch Avatar, and I got like half a season in again. I was like, I just don't love it. So I think I will like it. I don't know if it will overtake Korra because I know you understand my taste, Colton, but I already love Korra, and it's really hard, like I said, for me to boot things once I love them. And I know almost everything that happens. So it's like, and like all of the like twists or redemption arcs or like all of the things that are going to happen, I already know that they're going to happen, which makes it harder as opposed to if you're going in, you don't have any of that background knowledge.
I don't know. Like, there's one arc of Korra that I thought was really, really good. And that's where they go and explore all of the past avatars. Like, they go back to the first Avatar. I thought that was really good. They're coming out with a new Avatar, right?
Yeah,
like I think it's 2025. They went and formed their own studio, and now they're producing their own Avatar content.
Yeah, they're gonna make it. Who will be an Earthbender, I presume.
Yes, I think it's an Earthbender afterwards. But I mean, Last Airbender is arguably, not even arguably, it is a masterpiece. There's a reason it stood the test of time. And that's American animation, if I remember correctly. It's not even anime. It's it's one of the best animated works of fiction, I think, out there. It's got comic books, it's got books, it's got fan fiction, it's got its own spin-off shows, it's got one terrible live action movie.
I'm sure I'll like it. Like I don't think that I won't like it. I just don't think I'm going to like it more than Korra. And I know that that's going to be like unpopular. Patrick's still awake. Hi, Catherine. I've read 50% of Grandmasters. Which one's your favorite? Does she mean which volume is my favorite or which character is my favorite? Like which volume of the ones that are out or which character?
Okay, so I've kind of opened the bottle on Fall of Babel. Evie's mad at me. And Patrick is jumping on board. So the thing with The Fall of Babel is the first 3 books are fantastic. And I think my issue with the final book is it simply didn't end the way I wanted it to. I didn't hate it. It was just, it felt easy.
Right.
At the end. It felt like we didn't know how to close out that story, and so we just did something. That was my only issue with it.
I need to weigh in once I read it. So far, Patrick, tell Catherine, or Catherine if you are listening, I like the whole Grandmaster story as one. So it's harder to think of them. Grandmaster Drama Cultivation, Andrew, is a web novel that was translated into English and released in volumes. So the whole story I like, and it all comes together really well. The first volume is my least favorite just because I found it hard to sort out like who was who and which characters and what they were doing. Of the ones that are out so far, volume 3 is probably my favorite, but I know I'm going to love volume 4 as well, which is that one's technically out. I just don't have my copy yet. But as a whole, I love the whole story. And also, Catherine, as soon as you're finished reading this one, you need to read Heaven Official's Blessing because I'm reading that right now, and it's also fantastic.
Evie says that's not the book's problem, but it is the book's problem because the ending. What is that? Okay, I don't understand this argument, my good friend Evie. Because if I, the reader, didn't enjoy the ending, then it is the book's problem and it's my problem. It's both of our problems because. I don't understand, but I'm just trolling her now and saying keep it up, and I'll go on to Goodreads and drop it a full star. I won't, but Patrick is saying thank you. No, it's one of those things where like it's just it was one of those highly anticipated books, and not everybody was going to be happy because there was just decisions made in that series where it's very hard to just appease everybody.
That's fair.
Now, Evie's currently, she's mad at me because of my Robin Hobb takes, and apparently now
I saw in your video, like, you don't like the final trilogy?
Oh God, no.
What?
No.
Everybody loves the final trilogy.
Actually, that's not in fact true. I've been on Robin Hobb Discords where it's very divisive.
Really? I thought, like, I was not surprised by your, like, dragon opinions, because it seems like everybody has, like, middling opinions. Like, it's really just Evie and Derry who love the dragon books, and then everybody else doesn't like them as much.
And we love them.
And we love them. We do.
Exactly.
I thought that, like, I know everyone loves Tawny Man, but I thought that the ending was almost unanimously adored as well.
I've been in a couple of various Discords where they are dedicated to Robin Hobb. And, when I finished the series, I posted in there, I was like, this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I didn't like it. And it just, people started pinging off going, thank God I'm not the only one.
Oh, okay.
It is. So there are good story elements within the final trilogy.
Right.
It is, Robin Hobb is a master storyteller. Like, I'm not saying she writes bad books. So it's funny when it comes to, yeah, Evie is straight up yelling at us. When it comes to Rain Wild Chronicles, Evie and I have the exact same complaints. The problem is she's willing to look past those complaints and see, like, the deeper messages and stuff like that. I'm looking at what's on the page right there, and I did not enjoy reading that. And so, yeah, I'm going to rate the books lower. That brings down my enjoyment. And then there are some structural issues in Fitz and the Fool. There's a lot of fanfare in the final book, where we kind of go on just a tour of the Six Duchies. There's a bunch of stuff that didn't need to be there. There's a bunch of stuff that could have been executed very differently. And this is where, Evie, that's just not true. Spreading lies. My lawyer will be in touch. And no, I love, arguably the first 9 books of Realm of the Elderlings are my second favorite series of all time. It's good stuff. Like, Tawny Man was fantastic. Patrick, you can disagree, but again, I also liked Dread God. So, there's that. I love Dread God. And there are some things that are done within the final trilogy that, if you take a step back, because what Robin Hobb is really good at is she's good at getting the emotions. She's good at pulling you into the story with the emotions, so you're not going to focus on anything else that's going on outside of the page. But if you do take a step back and look at it structurally, and from a outside standpoint of, did this need to happen? Why did this particular event happen? So that we can then do things in the later books. It does have a couple of structural issues and a couple of things that I just didn't think were well executed.
Fair enough.
I've also always said, Robin Hobb sometimes will put story over characterization. Where there are times I felt, in Tawny Man even, where she... I just saw that comment.
It's so hard not to react and laugh at the same time.
Where Robin Hobb reaches into the story and makes a character do a thing that I feel goes against their characterization. But it does move the story forward in a way that she wants it to go. It does have an emotional impact, but I don't feel it's the way the character would have reacted.
Right.
And, Robin Hobb is a booktube darling. So is Fonda Lee. So is just Brandon Sanderson. These are the authors that... Okay, we're gonna move on so that me and Patrick can remain friends, and hopefully
Patrick, we don't want to.
He'll appear on a future episode of Wizardly Ramblings. We'll move on. How do you feel about Brandon Sanderson? I'm kidding.
I'm not talking now.
Oh, oh, it's fantastic. I'm so sorry, guys. We'll lay off. Let's talk about why Patrick's cradle takes are wrong.
No one's more depressive. It's true.
That's true. Well, unless your name is Kaladin and you're written by Brandon Sanderson.
I cannot believe that I'm spending my last day of 2022 reading this.
You don't like it?
I don't know. Number one, okay. I apologize. Please don't go unsubscribe en masse after I have this discussion.
I think if anybody's watching this and they're not subscribed to you, they should be.
This is the worst Mistborn book of the 3 so far. I am aware that I only have...
What about Zane? There's no Zane in that book.
200 pages left, but it's boring. So like the first 3/4 of this have been boring.
Okay.
And everybody says that amazing things are going to happen. When? I guess in the next 180 pages. But I think part of it too is, like I said earlier, I want to be reading other things, but I promised myself that I would finish this series. And so I'm forcing myself to read it, which I don't usually do. But I want to finish it today. And I don't know. I find it really hard. Brandon Sanderson's writing style does not appeal to me in any way, shape, or form. I do not like it. I do not like the way that he writes. But I do think that he is a good storyteller. And I do really love his endings. So Matt may be right. This last 200 pages may, in fact, blow the book up for me, which is what happened with book 1. I was feeling very lukewarm about it. And then I really loved the ending. And I was like, okay, this is, I do really like this. So I'm hoping that will help with Hero of Ages. There's one character that I really like in Hero of Ages who is saving the book for me, but I can't say which character it is because it's kind of spoilery. But for anyone who has read it, it is not a human character. So the non-human character is the character that I love in Hero of Ages. And if, frankly, the entire book was written from that character's opinion, then I would be a lot happier.
There's 10 reasons why that book is amazing.
But I am looking forward to the last bit. And I hope that I like it. I don't want to be a Brandon Sanderson bummer. Is Kyle still here? He yelled at me last time I said I didn't like Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, but Kyle yells at me whenever I say that I don't like Ken Liu, so I'm just kidding. Ken Liu's fine. I just like giving people a hard. I just giving a hard time. It's like being Alan. You've got to crave the chaos.
True. Evie, I did message Alan this morning. Actually, I was like, "This is the worst of the 3 Mistborn books," and Alan was like, "It is the worst of the 3 Mistborn books." I'm surprised Alan's not here. I wonder what he's up to.
I don't know. I haven't reread Era 1 in years. It has been a long time since I read Era 1. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how I'd feel about it on reread. I was one of the few people, or at least one of the few people that I talked to who read Elantris first. So I like Elantris. And a lot of people hate Elantris. And Nico's like, why would I bring up Dandelion Dynasty? Because I crave violence.
You didn't like Dandelion Dynasty? You can't say that.
Fine.
It's your favorite series of the year.
No. So, okay. I will say this. When it comes to Ken Liu, he was able to get me more with Paper Menagerie than he was with, what's the first book called? Wall
of Storms? Is that the first one?
No, that's book 2.
I don't remember what the first one's called. Fall of Kings. No, Fall of
Kings is Jen Lyons.
Grace of
Kings. There we go. I was like, I almost said Way of Kings, and I was like, nope, that's definitely not it. Grace of Kings is a good book. It's like a 3 to 3.5 star read for me. There's a great Grace of Kings.
He's too excited.
Oh God. It's a good book. What kind of threw me for a loop was there was an interview that the author did where he said it's American fantasy, and I don't see that at all. Right. It was sold to me as Asian fantasy, and I believed that 100%. And so it's interesting to kind of get that perspective from the author of like, I wasn't writing it to be, I almost dropped my water, to be Asian inspired fantasy. He said it was more about the American way of life. And I'd have to go back and reread the book is basically what it amounts to. But it was great getting the perspective of the main characters and their dynamic and how their kind of lives interweave and like dissect and then come back, and that had a great dynamic. It felt very much like a standalone to me though. So when I read it, I didn't immediately have the urge to jump into Wall of Storms. And then when other people jumped into Wall of Storms, they were like, "Oh, it's really good." But like you've got to get through the first 30 to 40% first.
Right. And it is a chunky book.
And it's a chunky book. And I've got so much on my shelves now. I'll read it. I'll get to it. Just so that I can make friends with Patrick again, because I'm sure for at least the first day of 2023, we are friends off. But Patrick, I love you.
I have a question for anyone who owns the softcover UK editions of the Dandelion Dynasty, which are the pretty ones, right? Like the pink ones.
The
ones
like turquoise.
Yeah.
The teal?
Is one of those like drastically different in style? Like, is one of them a totally different size than the other three? Because I think I saw a picture of somebody who had 4 of those soft covers, which are the ones that I would like to order. But if one is like a completely different size than the others, I will hate it. So if you have those, please let me know.
Yeah, please let's. I unhauled my copies to one of my patrons. Yeah, because of the whole spine fiasco. It would have stayed right there on the shelf if they had just flipped them. Like, what kind of quality control was that? That was horrendous quality control, which is becoming just an awful, awful thing, where people are just not paying any attention. My Robert McCammon right here, you can see where they've just cut off half of the word books. Like, why? Why? There was no call for that. And then over here, my LPQs, the one chip just fell, which I'll be doing the one chip challenge and burning my mouth off when I hit 3K eventually. Why don't those match? Was that super hard? They're the same size.
My LPQs are the same size, which I don't think Petrick's are. I think Petrick and I have the same copies, like the same hard copies of Long Price Quartet, and mine match and his don't.
Like, these are the UK B trade paperbacks. And this right here is the only thing that drives me nuts.
It's the only thing in the whole world that drives you nuts.
Exactly. That's right. I am taking a stand. I am angry at only that. Everything else is perfect and flawless. I live on rainbows and butterflies. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, the spine fiasco.
So can't leave.
Yes! I will count that as pure victory, my friend.
We need to start talking about the Night Circus and Uprooted. That will really get Petrick going. 2 amazing
you know what?
He hates unfairly.
I have not read any Naomi Novik. Or is it Naomi Novik who did Uprooted?
Yeah.
And Spinning Silver?
Yeah.
I haven't read those. And then what was the other one that will get him triggered?
The Night Circus.
And that's Aaron Morgenstern?
Yeah, Aaron Morgenstern, yep.
Morgenstern. I haven't read. I think Nico DNF that one as well. Or no, Nico liked one of them. I don't know which one it was.
Genuinely, non-ironically.
Oh, okay. No, Nico liked Uprooted. So he's back to being on Petrick's bad side again. I don't know. Reading is such a subjective hobby. Mm-hmm. We all like what we like, and what some people are going to like, others aren't going to like. It's one of the reasons why I haven't started Empire of the Vampire yet. I am terrified that I'm either
because if you like it, Alan will hate you forever. So you can't even go in there expecting to like it because you'll never live it down. God forbid you give it more than 3 stars.
Oh.
Just no.
That's right. Because He's always yelling at you because you gave it. Didn't you give it 5 stars? 4 stars.
I only gave it 4 stars. I only gave it 4 stars. It was a good book. I liked it.
Fair enough. But you and Alan liked it. I think Patrick liked it too. Mark from Slowly Read liked it. So like enough people that I'm like, okay, I respect you guys. Like I take book recommendations from you all the time. I should like this. And then the other half of me is going
that you would hate.
Yeah, on the other hand, it sounds like something that I'm gonna absolutely hate.
I think there are parts of it that you would like, but there are parts of it that you as a person, knowing the things that you have hated in other books, you will loathe certain parts of this book.
And so I'm just, it's right there. I bought the Waterstones Black Sprayed Edge edition because I have 0 self-control. And I was just like, I have to have it on the shelf. And then it's now been a year that it's been on my shelf.
Yeah.
And you see, it's pretty divided. It's you love it or you hate it. And so I'm just stuck here in indecision land, and I don't know how to break out of it. There's
one particular scene that I know that you will get to it, and it wouldn't surprise me if you just close the book. Like maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you would just go on past it and you'd be like, I'm going to scrub that scene from my mind. But there's one part, and it is like a sexual scene, and I know that you are going to hate it.
So, like, it's funny because there's a book I was reading recently that had a sexual scene in it. And I messaged the author because it's a review copy. I'm not going to name names or anything. And I was just like, why? That was pornographic. I was like, you went into detail. And they were like, yeah, I didn't realize how far over the line I crossed until I listened to it on audio because he was reviewing his audio. And he was like, yeah, I went too far. And I was just like that was porn. That's what that was. Like that was porn. And I did close the book after that. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a small step back.
Yep. See, everyone's like that part. You know what the part is if
well, now I'm curious. Yeah, Evie knows exactly what book I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But now you guys have me curious. I don't mind sex in books. It's just every once in a while, like I don't need the super descriptive stuff, or like if you describe it oddly. I've got a friend.
Not even about the sex in this part. It's deranged. Like what happens in this scene is like not good.
Is it like armpit stuff or?
No.
That's where my brain goes. It's deranged. It's got to involve the armpit.
We have very different levels for what constitutes deranged. If yours is armpit, like we have clearly spent time on different parts of the internet. If the worst place your brain can go is an armpit, like
I don't know.
No, Andrew. No, it's not an armpit.
That sure means just like armpit.
Good Lord.
Oh, jeez. Evie is saying this is just a carryover from the rant. Apparently, I rant a lot.
Everybody.
Tori's just like, what did I come back to? I'm sure I could think of something more deranged, but I'm trying to keep it mostly PG.
Okay, let's move away. Let's move away from this.
Let's move away. It's funny. So what?
Patrick's like, why do I stay up late for this armpit discussion?
Listen, I bring you all here for the quality content, the content that you didn't know you wanted. Okay.
Patrick has been friends with me long enough that he also knows that life can get a lot weirder than armpit stuff.
So like, did you read Anna Stevens, Godblind?
No.
Okay, I'm just wondering if it's like close to that because I did DNF that. Like, Andrew Armpit can confirmed.
It is not about, this is not quality content. So there are explicit scenes in Empire of the Vampire. Explicit scenes don't bother me. There are scenes in Empire of the Vampire that are meant to demonstrate that people's humanity has been clearly distorted. And so the act that is happening between people who should never be engaged in that kind of stuff.
Okay. So we're talking closer to the level of it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We can move on.
Can get out of this conversation now.
And now we can start talking about Speaks the Nightbird. I'm just kidding. That's the same issue. So in terms of let's kind of, before, because we'll probably wrap up here in 10-15 minutes, let's talk about some classic fantasy. Other than Lord of the Rings, what are some of the classic fantasies that you don't quite talk about as often as you would like?
Well, I talked about Shannara earlier today, so that was definitely like a foundational fantasy series for me. I read that pretty young, and I do actually still like some of Terry Brooks' stuff, like his urban fantasy series that ties in with his like greater Shannara universe, which is called the Night of the Word. No, is that what the Word in the Void? Maybe is what the series is called. I actually really like those ones, so I do still really like those books. In terms of like Arthurian books, Mary Stewart's Arthurian stories are classic fantasy that I really like. So that's like 70s, 80s fantasy that I find really enjoyable. Watership Down, in terms of standalone, that's one of my favorite books of all time. Other classic fantasy that I really like, that I don't get to talk about a whole lot. What else do I really enjoy that I don't really get to talk about? Let's see. Let me scooch around. You still is stuff still happening? Drizzt. I actually do still really like the Drizzt books.
Yeah, I've got unpopular opinions about that too.
I know you didn't. I know.
Which is funny, because going all the way back to when we talked about Elric, like I saw the inspiration that Elric had on Drizzt, and I just thought the first Elric book did it better, and then I gave the fourth Elric book 1 star, which is just me talking myself into a corner. I think I was being harsh on Drizzt.
Yeah.
I think I was coming into it looking at it from a critical kind of eye, which is hard. It's hard as a booktuber to turn off that critical eye. Sometimes, like, I fully admit I've ruined books for myself just because I can't look past critiquing it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just let it go and sink into the story.
That's fair.
And like the whole culture of Menzo Berenzon just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I just it started like irritating me. That, like,
that's the first scene. So I mean, it started off at a low point for you.
Well, the whole point is, and this isn't really a spoiler for Drizzt, is that the Dark Elves are evil. They are evil. And so they're like, yeah, we want Drizzt to be evil. Let's have him trained by the one good guy in Menzo Berenzon. And, well, okay, moderately good guy in Menzo Berenzon. And then, like, Drizzt is surprised at his culture, like, as he's 30 years old, and I'm like, what? I don't know. At that point, I was unable to suspend my disbelief.
You checked
for the
out
series
at that point.
Yeah.
To answer Evie's question, I have read George MacDonald, so I have read The Princess and the Goblin, and did I read Phantastes as well? I think so.
I don't know what those are.
It's super like old fantasy, like some of the first fantasy novels.
The Strain, maybe? I missed something here.
I'm not sure.
Nancy, let me know what you meant. Yes. So in terms of fantasy, I'm starting Cycle of Fire in January. I'm also starting, get back here, you big thickum book. This big boy, for the first time, well, is mostly for the first time next month. I've read probably 40% of it.
I did not know you hadn't read Game of Thrones.
Nah, I haven't read it. Well, I've read about 40% of Game of Thrones, mainly because at the time I started reading it, like I just had a loss in the family, and I wasn't in a place to read Game of Thrones, and then it's just never quite slotted back in, and I wasn't in a good frame of mind, so I didn't enjoy what I was reading anyway, because it's a dark book in a dark time. Like, it's not a good idea. Like in the last month, I just recently had to start taking a step back, because like I was so deep into burnout that I wasn't enjoying what I was reading.
Yep.
And I mean, if you are burned out reading books, you are not gonna like them.
No.
And so that's kind of one of the reasons I'm wanting to next year put a hard cap on what I'm reading, because I'm a little compulsive. So if I feel like I can fit as many books into a month, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
But like, there's other stuff I can do. Like, if I'm only doing 4 or 5 book reviews a month, I don't need to be reading 20 books a month. Like, that's silly. And I know, like, in my brain that is silly, which is why, like, I want to put a hard cap on like 15. So if I hit 15 books, I'm just gonna stop reading for the month. Like, that's what
other things.
Yeah, I'll just go do other things and then make content based on what I've already read. But what Ben is saying, Feist is really good. Next year, I'm planning on reading the Empire trilogy that Petrick loves. So don't worry, Petrick. I'm gonna read some good books.
Coming back for your friendship. I want to read some Mercedes Lackey next year. She's on my list too.
I've heard that's the Heralds of Valdemar, right?
Yes.
I've heard mixed things about it. I've heard that like it's great classic fantasy that maybe hasn't aged the best, but at the same time, I've heard great things about the initial trilogy. And then, yes, Tori, I have been just I started the live stream saying that I've just been kind of nitpicking at Shogun for the last few days, and that's really it. And that's been kind of helping me, because normally I'll do 6 to 7 hours of audiobook a day on top of 2 to 3 hours of physical reading. And that's a lot to just constantly sit in there mired in that. So I've been really stepping back, maybe doing 2 hours of audio and no reading at the end of the night. And I've been slowly feeling myself kind of pull out of burnout. So, but it's gotten to the point now where I'm getting to the point where it's like, I don't really want to listen to audiobooks. I just want to relax. So I started Shogun early. I've got a head start. I don't really need to push on that one. And I think the time frame of it changed. Alan did a video last night, where he kind of broke down the timeline for the read along of Shogun. And I'm almost done with part 1. And I think they're only doing part 1 and 2 in January. So I'm almost done with what I need to read for that for January.
That makes sense.
Are you excited? I like this idea that you came up with for your January TBR, where you're only going to put 6 books hard on your TBR, and then
with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it gives you a lot of mood reading options, and I like that idea.
I was not successfully reading my TBRs, and I would get like angry that the books were on there, because I felt like very penned in. So I feel like this way I can set up an expectation for people who are watching the channel to actually read the books that I'm talking about, but also give myself enough flexibility so that if there's something else that I want to read that month, I can fit it in. Evie, I did get The Spirit Cuts Through Water for Christmas, so I'm going to read that one. If you want to pick any other books for me, then you can feel free. I will read them.
I actually have Leslie. I let Leslie pick 4 of my books for January. So there's some good stuff in there. She picked Ungodly. She picked, what else did she pick? She's picked The Children of Gods and Fighting Men.
Andrew, we can't leave. Alan just got here.
What?
I said we can't. You were like, we're gonna wrap up in 10 minutes. I was like, we can't. Alan's here now.
Yeah, 12 p.m. Isn't 12 p.m. noon?
12
I didn't put 12 a.m. as midnight. At least that's the way I've always run things. Alan, am I mistaken? We've been talking about you for 2 hours, sir. You're gonna have to go back and watch all of them. We've talked so much trash.
That's not true. We talked about what a good friend I am because I'm reading the books that you gave me for January.
Yeah, we did talk about that, but we talked about Sarah winning back your friendship and no longer using you as a stepping stone friend. Don't worry, Alan. I never left you. You just don't like my book taste because apparently I don't read traditional fantasy. Alan's so confused. He's like, wait, what's going on? He's been thrown into the deep end.
What's happening?
What's happening? Ah! Alan, you can skip over the armpit stuff.
Oh man. I hope Andrew caught that part of the conversation from out there in the living room. That's true.
Oh, we've got it. We've got it here. You heard it here first, guys. Speaking of Jemmy, I'm hoping to have Jemmy on in January for the Wizardly Ramblings.
Everyone start yelling about books. Just the chat just needs to become a flood of all caps comments.
It's just going to become a flood of negativity. Oh, geez. Speaking of negativity, let's talk about the Poppy War. No, I'm just kidding. Let's not talk about the Poppy War because that was one of my first hate reads ever. I did not like the Poppy War. Tori, you're gonna make me reach in and grab the hatred, or I can just go back to talking about Elric. I could do that quite easily. Or now that Alan's here, I can start ranting about the Black Company.
Weird of the White Wolf, Andrew's favorite book of 2022.
Oh yeah, it was so good that I gave it a 1-star rating. Alan, there's like 2 hours of chaos going on here. We love you, man. We love you.
Someone Cliffs notes me. Well, we talked about books, got on a lot of tangents, got onto the Empire of the Vampire. Andrew assumes that there's weird armpit stuff happening in that book because in his mind, that's the weirdest sexual kink that exists, is somehow having an armpit involved. We traumatized Patrick and kept him up 2 hours past his bedtime because we kept talking about things that he hated. Then we congratulated me for being such a good friend and reading books that you assigned for me in January. And now Andrew's looking for a classic fantasy to recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to answer Charmaine, I don't know if this is a serious question or not. The reason I get obsessed. I obsessive compulse on something. So when I am in a reading mood, that's all I will do. So like when I do a data entry style of job where I literally sit here at my desk and I process work, and I can do that with an audiobook on. And so as you know, I listen at probably 1.5 to 1.8 speed on audio, and that can feel like a fairly natural cadence to me. Although whenever somebody walks into my space, if I don't have my headphones plugged in, they're just like, tell me that's sped up. And I'm like, yeah, it's sped up. But like, it sounds natural to me. But when I'm doing something and I feel rewarded by finishing something, like I get a small like shot of serotonin whenever I, finish a book, and I feel good about myself. So then I just keep doing it. And then I'm also incredibly competitive. So whenever I sign up for readathons, like the Indie Accords readathon, I read 25 books that month because there was no limit to how much you could read. And it just became a habit. And so I'm having to walk it back. And I do want to read. I do want to find a better balance of self-pub and traditional, because I do have a ton of trad pub on my shelves. It's actually, I've got 4 traditional shelves and 2 self-pub shelves. So like these 2 right here are all self-pub. And then 2 here and 2 here, these are all traditional. And I am sitting at only like 30% of what's on my shelves read. which is a huge problem. So anyway, I'm going to get off on a tangent.
I do have a question. When you did your unhaul, Andrew, did you actually free up a lot more space? Like, do you now have space for books, or are you still drowning in them?
Yes and no. So I've got a shelf over here that used to be full of books, and it's off camera, of course, but that now houses my Stephen King collection. But I lost because I had a beer bottle collection that was mounted on the wall, and I didn't want to remount them on the wall because that's kind of cliche or something. I don't know. It's something I would have done in my 20s. But so I've put what remains of my beer bottle collection, because I got rid of a lot of it as well, on that bookshelf, and it looks cool. I like the aesthetic of it. It's in my library tour. I then, to compensate for the shelf space lost, I bought 2 new shelves. Because they're only 36 inches wide. They're Target. They're like $36. They're cheap, affordable. But at the same time, I also got rid of around 100 books when I was moving.
Right.
And so I do have room, but I have books on every shelf, at least 3 to 4 shelves down. So I've got room on the bottom, and I've got some room right here. But so I've still got about 2 shelves worth of free space. It's just all underneath the camera.
Right.
So yes and no.
Do you only keep books in that one room? Like, do you put them in other places in the house as well?
No.
Right.
No. That's not really by choice. That's more of my wife doesn't want to live in a library.
That's really sad.
I am a reader. I don't think my wife has read a book in 6 years.
Right.
So like it's just not her thing.
Right.
So she's it's funny. I'm the nerd. I read. She plays hockey.
Yeah.
So she goes and plays hockey. So she's the jock. I'm the nerd.
I love it. Love to see it.
Hey, the dynamic works. We've been together. Let's see. We're getting ready to celebrate our 7th year married, and then we've been together since 2012.
Nice.
So 2011, 2012. I don't know. That's a hazy period. It's one of those two. We didn't bother to mark it down on the calendar of this is when we started dating. We threw out the dating date of like, hey, we've been married, we've been dating for 6 months. No, we don't do that anymore. It's now, this is when we had the kids. This is when we got married. Those are the dates we celebrate.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hi, Safina. Safina's awesome.
Agreed.
All right. Yeah, it is audiobook speed is something that you definitely need to train yourself up to. Because when I started it, I couldn't go past 1.2. So I got comfortable at 1.2, and then I bumped it up to like 1.4. That was too fast. So I bumped it down to 1.3, and then I just kept doing that until I got to about 1.5 to 1.8. And depending on the narrator, like if it's somebody who talks really fast, it's 1.5. It's somebody who talks really slow, it's like a 1.8. So like Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are 1.8s, and then like Travis Baldry's a 1.5.
I've never listened to Travis Baldry narrate anything, but when Bookborn did that like authors reading mean tweets video, I heard him talk in the video, and I was like, wow, he really does have a nice voice. So
he's so great.
To something.
There was recently a episode of Page Chewing with Steve Made Between the Pages and P.L. Stewart, where they had Travis on. And yeah, I mean, he does his interviews in his recording booth and everything like that. So like his voice, and he thinks he's got voice like gravel. But like I like his voice. I've listened to Cradle, I've listened to Thousand Lee, I've listened to Warhite, I've listened to like 4 or 5 series that he's narrated, and I've enjoyed them all.
Nice.
So
I have Cradle on ebook, but did you say he narrated 1000 Lee?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll listen to that one.
That's by Tao Wong. Tao Wong does yeah, Tori is just now doing her first audio, which was, I think it was Wuthering Heights, and she didn't like it.
No.
Yeah, so basically recently I've been coming to the realization that like a bunch of people who read Cradle physically didn't enjoy the book super early. and I started on audio, and I think he bumps up each book by like a half star to a full star.
Nice.
And that's in my opinion, of course, but he just brings so much personality and fun to those stories that it's hard to beat when you're listening to Baldry. And then like when he does Legends and Lattes, that's just so fun because it's his story.
Mm-hmm. I do agree with that one. The best audio that I have listened to is Warlord Chronicles for sure.
Oh man, I've got a video coming out that I think I've got it scheduled where I talk about books that are just elevated by the
audio experience.
The audio experience. I'm actually going into my studio right now to see when I've got that scheduled. I've got to go over there. But like, I mean, First Law, I mean, Pacey is, I've got that coming out January 9th. Yeah. But yeah, there's First Law, there's Dresden, there's just a whole bunch that are really good on audio.
Agreed.
And of course, Warlord is one of those because if I had to read Gorfethid, there was no way I was going to come up with Gorfethid.
Yeah.
Nimue and Durful and Dern, like I my brain would have done those incorrectly.
Yeah, it was very difficult for me to retain all of the names in the first half of book 1.
Really?
Yeah. Alan. You are very on top of things, Andrew. How far in advance do you have your videos?
So
scheduled?
Before the move, I was scheduled a month out.
Wow.
But that was with me doing 2 videos a day, or not a day, sorry, a month, a week. I don't know, whatever. We'll wrap up here in a second. My voice is starting to wear out. Right now, I keep 4 unedited videos in the tank and 4 uploaded on the channel at any given moment. So
that's awesome.
We discussed this, Alan. We did.
We can't escape it.
That said, my voice is starting to wear out, and we have been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I just want to thank you for coming on my channel and chatting with me for so long.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. Apparently, we've discovered that I'm just evil to women, and armpits are a thing, and yeah, that we've discovered some really important things.
It's true. That's what happens when you bring a psychiatrist on for your first talk. People discover the parts of yourself that you wanted to keep hidden. They're all out in the open now.
I've been psychoanalyzed. That's what's happened. All right. Well, again, if anybody is watching this and you have not subbed to Sarah, please do so. She's fantastic. She's one of my best friends here. And I think this is where we're going to end it.
Bye, everybody.